What's up? Welcome to the video about running on desert dirt roads. Deserts have a distinct difference in how these roads occur. Even in shoes, what looks like it's gonna be easy turns into a full-fledged active endurance. Because a lot of people think of desert dirt roads like this. A nice, pretty well-maintained road. What I'm gonna talk about in the video, what you gotta do in sandals to be able to run this thing. Even a normal road can start turning really sandy. It becomes something completely different. So, here we go to running back roads, sandy roads, in sandals. First thing that you realize when running these roads is you gotta run where the tires are. You can't run in the center because the sand is way too soft. So you stick to one side or the other and you tend to find the flattest area, the least sandier part. Now, it might get a little windy here. One of the more interesting runs in the desert is when you have a barely present road like this. Just seems pretty chill. The easy part is when the sand is pretty firm, but then as you keep running, you tend to run into softer patches, especially where like a ATV has come through or someone has driven through. You can find the harder patches, but then there's like unequal grounding, so you're always moving up and down, and it's harder to find a more stable place to actually run. The technique that I've learned running down these dirt roads in these inclines through these ATV trails is the technique of avoiding getting sand between the sole of my feet and the sandal itself. Because there's such soft sand on all the different sides, I look for the tire rut that's the flattest and the firmest, which allows me to actually like keep running, shake any sand that does get in there, and then finally I get to enjoy the views that I'm looking at without having to shake sand loose. Running at the bottom of a gulch of a desert wash, which is where the water runs when it actually is raining or flash flooding, is also where ATV trails are found to be the softest. You gotta choose the deepest furrows to actually get through it, because no matter what, the sand is incredibly churned up, so there's resistance at every step. You tend to actually have to zig and zag, and I found that if I can get to the side where the ATVs haven't run, there's firmer ground and it's easier to run. The hardest part, though, of these ATV trails is when they intersect with other ATV trails or other dirt roads, because the sand is put into mounds and hills, and that just sucks. Shoe or sandal, you're going to slip and slide, and you're going to have a bit of resistance every time you push off. Something I'm going to stop and actually point out: shoes or sandals, regardless. Running desert dirt roads, the one thing that is kind of cool to notice, to be aware of, and also terrifying, is, see, it's a bunch of lines, one after another, going that way. That's called a snake. So I always like to pay attention, because it's always like, where's the snake? Footprints like this that are a lizard, probably, just because the tail's dragging. There's a lot of cool information that running the roads will give you. Snakes are the good to know. Now I'm terrified. One thing that I noticed as I was watching all these videos as I was running was that my foot is further back on the sandal. I slowed this a little bit down so you could see that. And I don't know if that's the best technique. I also caught a cool moment where I kind of stumbled and you just see the amount of dirt that's kicked up. I see my feet towards the back in these videos, but it feels natural to me, so I haven't had the need to correct it. And it helps me get through these roads without that much of an issue, no more than if I was in shoes. One of the parts that I've had to work on in sandals is the ability to cross from one side to the other. Usually I do that to find those harder patches where the ATV trails haven't run. One of the cool parts of doing the dirt roads and doing out and backs is I get to see my footprints and I get to study my form, see if I'm stepping correctly. One thing that doesn't change is sometimes I do have to stop and shake the sand loose. Running on these desert dirt roads and seeing these footprints is actually a key part of the training in sandals, because I get to see how I'm striking. And I used to strike my heel more than my forefoot, and now I'm actually seeing that it's a forefoot strike, and that makes me very happy. Now for the final part, one of the few uphill parts with rocks, it's kind of the opposite of running on dirt roads. This is where you're looking for the soft sand, trying to avoid the little bit of rock so that way, you know, there's no slippage and there's no sprained ankle and there's no cuts. And overall, just an easy hill to do in these sandals. So there you go, a few things to look at. Hopefully, if you're out on the Mojave and you're in your sandals or just in your shoes, this will help you. Whew. And there's my truck.